Welcome, everyone, to the Go Long podcast. This is Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis. Jim, it's been a bit. How in the hell you doing? It's Labor Day. Did you celebrate? Did you fit in any fantasy drafts? What's happening in your world?
Happy Labor Day. And for fantasy drafts, real quick, fantasy drafts, it's just like your brackets in March. That's for families and office pools only. That is not something I'm into. Keep that in your family and your office and don't talk about it in public. Bad luck.
I like it.
You
don't want to
that's
hear
kind
people's fantasy advice and how they fared over the weekend. You don't want that kind of breakdown.
Right. Can't everybody has you could lose your mind hearing about people's fantasy teams. That being said, it's still there is some fun to fantasy. I'm not against it, just not my thing. But Tyler, I have a question for you because we have been off. College football has started, and we have been craving just real football, right? NFL preseason, we'll talk about it soon enough. But it was so fun to see games that matter every time. It's just that time of year. Something that I can't understand, and I need all coaches that are listening to our podcast, somebody just help me out. If you're down 42-0 in the fourth quarter, if you're down 56, if you're down 56-0 in the fourth quarter, what does the field goal do for you to lose 56-3, 42-3? That's my question, Tyler. I just need an answer. What's your best guess?
It's crazy that we didn't even talk about this before we dinged record, Jim, because I was on the treadmill at the gym. Thankfully, the older fella who loves to douse himself in cologne that we've mentioned before, he was not on the treadmill next to me. So I was able to function and breathe while trying to break even. It's not even a workout. You go on the treadmill for a few miles. You're just trying to break even on the day. Oh. But it was Navy and Notre Dame.
It was
Ireland. That's the game, right? Yeah. So 42-0. It's on NBC. So I think, there's a Simon Cowell ad for whatever singing show he's up to now. It looked like his face was just, dumped into a bucket of makeup. So I'm a little thrown off at that point. Like, what's going on here? A little too much Simon Cowell eyeliner. And then, Navy just trots out there for a field goal attempt. 4 minutes left, down 42-0. You got to slice the deficit to 39. Maybe they're thinking, 3 or 4 onside kicks, a little voodoo, maybe an injury or two. Maybe Tom Brady decides to come out of retirement and can break a few rules to play for you, and you're right back in it. So totally that was insane. I don't understand it. I would love to know. I mean, is it gambling? Should we be conspiracy theorists here and think that something's up? But why? Why kick the field goal?
There you go. I don't believe it's gambling, but the gambler in me can't figure it out. Because, to your point, with Navy, that touchdown mattered. The total was 48.5, 49, depending. A touchdown there does a lot for people. Now, I don't believe they know anything like that, especially Navy. No way. Like, they're not paying attention to that. And nobody's calculated. You can't predict and script. I know that's a big thing. You can't really script games. It's just not possible. So it's just the amazement of gambling, how the gamblers look at that with such just why. But in reality, it doesn't matter. The coach has every right. He can say here's my guess. He's going to say 2 things. One, if he tells you it's 4, he doesn't want to get shut out. I think you should look for a new coach. That is about as weak of an excuse, or I can't think of a player. Look, we've all gotten beat before. Okay. I can tell you if when we were getting beat, that field goal at the end, that wouldn't help me that night. Like, you lose. I don't care if you lose by 40, by 3. It hurts. So I'd move on from that coach if that's what if he said. Now, the other excuse he might give, he wants to work on the special teams, the operations. And if they say that, I'm going to cringe because Okay, I'll give it to you, but I'm not buying it. Not buying it. All right,
I'm
I
kind of
had to
mad at
get that off.
myself. I
I had to
wanted
get
to
that off.
listen to the press conference for the coach. I don't even know who their coach is. Afterward, we should really look it up. Maybe there's a listener out there who did catch the reasoning, because I would hope that he was asked about this, because nothing else in that game really mattered. Like the psychology behind the field goal attempt, down 42-0 with 4 minutes to go. You know, you're getting your face beat in, you're getting curb stomped. What do you want to like come up for air for a few seconds? Like it just at least try to win. You know, it's kind of apples and oranges, but it did kind of remind me of the AFC Championship game a few years ago when Mahomes and the Chiefs are just moving the ball at will against Buffalo. The Bills drive the length of the field at the end of the first half and chip shot field goal to go into halftime down, 21-9, something like that. We're fans of the killer instinct on this show. We'll just say that. We want you to try to win the game. And to the extreme, that was not winning the game. You know what did stand out to me, though, Jim? And I'm not really anti-college football. I enjoy it. You know, if it's on, I'll watch it. And I'm wearing a Syracuse shirt because they took it to Colgate 65-0. You know, that's a victory worth celebrating.
They
All
covered.
the blowouts. I don't know. It's just like all of these Power Five. I don't even know what a Power Five school is anymore with all the realignment, but all of these blowouts, it makes me miss the NFL because you're going to get close games. It feels like every single pro football game is decided by 2 or 3 plays.
I agree. It takes you right away. As excited as I was just for football that matters, quote, it makes you just want the NFL more. It's no way else to say it. It's a track meet. It's hard. College football, like you said, half the games are unwatchable because it's not even a game. The other games you don't really need to watch until the fourth quarter anyway. It's just a track meet. You know, it's tough. It's tough for me to. I don't love watching college football. I don't. I can't. It's just I love the NFL though. Like love watching the NFL.
And it's here, baby. It is NFL game week. The Detroit Lions will face off against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday. I don't even know where to start, Jim. I'm really excited. You know, 6.5 months of sitting here on the podcast or in front of my laptop writing stories about, you know, one reason I do love the NFL too over anything else, it is the other stuff. It's the drama, it's the draft, it's free agency, it's player movement, it's all the other stuff. But let's be real, like there's a lot of dead air that needs to be filled for 6.5 months. And a lot of the times the storylines that can kind of whip around the country and take off, it should be more of a footnote. So I'm so glad that we have substantive games to discuss. Hey, let's turn this into a season preview episode. Let's just kind of take it division by division. What stands out to you? A team, a player, a narrative. And I think the theme of this, Jim, is probably going to be what teams can realistically win the Super Bowl outside of the expected core, 4 or 5 teams, right? Everybody's going to be spewing the predictions this week. A lot of Chiefs, a lot of Bills, a lot of Eagles, a lot of 49ers, Bengals. Is there another team? I've got a few in mind, one of which I'll probably take in our predictions. Who should kind of nudge their way into that group? Because somebody will. Somebody always does. And what better way to start this podcast, Jim, than the Euro division? Let's go right to the AFC East. Buffalo Bills come up quite often on this show, justifiably so, because we live here in Western New York. 2 ways to look at this team. Okay, and I think I know where you lie. They're banging on the door. They're bound to bust it open, get to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. You've got the star power, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Von Miller. You can outscore anybody. Lord, if they got some playoff games at home the second time around, I'd be shocked if they lay the kind of egg they did against Cincinnati. Or you look at this team through a different lens. It's, wow, these drafts have been subpar. It's catching up to them. They just offloaded Boogie Basham to the New York Giants and Joe Shane, who drafted him originally. But AJ Epinesa hasn't given you a lot. Kyrie Elam isn't even starting. He's a first-round pick. Some mediocre drafts adding up. Von Miller's going to be eased back. Stephon Diggs is a little unhappy. Josh Allen's being told to kneel or get out of bounds more, not be himself. The offensive line, the right side of the line, we got into it on our last show. There's some concerns there. Inside linebacker, next to Matt Milano. Nobody stepped up and took that job. They're signing Christian Kirksey off the street. There's enough holes on this roster that you can at least send your mind to a pretty dark place if you're a Bills fan and see that the Dolphins, they still have a bunch of 4x1 track stars all over the field, and Vic Fangio run to the defense, and Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Phillips. I think he'll be up for Defensive Player of the Year. He's a stud. You can start to get a little concerned in that division. And, oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. Bill Belichick is always going to, not always, the Bills have kind of had their way with Belichick, so maybe I'll stop myself short on that one. But the greatest coach of all time is still in your division. You could also see the Bills going 500 and struggling. How do you see the 2023 Buffalo Bills? Because the variance on this team, it may be a little wider than what we thought.
So you just kind of was like a little gut punch right there to me with the Bills. I'm pretty all in. Let's go with our window of opportunity for Buffalo. We talk about it every podcast, I feel like. I officially do feel like the window is closing on the defensive side of the football for the Buffalo Bills. I think this is their last chance with this core unit of players. The Von Miller, the safeties, Hyde, Poyer, Trey White coming back. They moved on from Edmonds. This is their new core unit as far as this is our one shot with where we're at age-wise, contract-wise on defense. They have to get it done, Tyler, on defense this year. And that's on the head coach. He's taken that on himself. There is no excuse for Sean McDermott, who is personally, he will tell you his baby is the defense. He has to battle Tua, who he knows. Mac Jones, he's not concerned about. I promise you he's not. Not that you have to show up. I mean, that offense is going to be tough with O'Brien. They're going to be tough because they're going to have O'Brien's offenses are always tough. But you're going to beat Aaron Rodgers. I'm with you on the Jets. I'm not buying in. This is your last shot, Sean McDermott. You have your franchise quarterback. The offense is loaded and ready to go. You've taken over the defense. Results have to be win the division and get to the Super Bowl. And Tyler, not only do I think they'll win the division, and I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. I don't care how they do it. Win the division, get to the playoffs. We already talked about that. Their season starts in the playoffs. I'm picking the Bills to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl this year. I feel good about it. I think this is their shot. I think they know it. I think this team changes after this season. Your thoughts?
That's one hell of a dissection. I hadn't really thought of the defense, in those terms, because it's so true that you've got 5-6 drafts now that a defensive coach has kind of wrapped his arms around and tried to mold himself, and it's been really, really good in the regular season, right? The rankings are going to look solid
every year.
They get into the playoffs, and the Mahomeses and the Burrows, even go back to Deshaun Watson. I mean, they erased a 16-0 deficit to beat Buffalo in that wild card game. Like, when it matters most, this defense isn't built for that moment, right? Even the 13 seconds game, we spend so much time discussing coin flips and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes going back and forth and Gabe Davis's touchdowns. Like, this is a defensive head coach seeing his defense get absolutely embarrassed. I mean, they could not stop anything, including that overtime when Andy Reid just toyed with his former what is gopher, I guess, right? Sean McDermott was his gopher at one point. Yeah, I mean, it's about the playoffs. So I'm going to give Sean McDermott that. There's no more scapegoating. There's no more finger pointing. He's pointed at himself, which is refreshing. However this defense performs this year, it's on him. There's no more guesswork. No more who's calling the plays, who's responsible for what. At what point did he kind of insert himself into the play calling during games, which I guarantee you that's happening. Anybody out there who just thinks Leslie Frazier's calling a defense 75 of 75 plays, right? I've got I've got some real estate up in Antarctica, down in Antarctica. Jesus, Jim. We got to pick these podcasts up to sell you. It's his defense. It's his defense. My point being, I give him credit. Like, now we know it's his reputation on the line, and it's going to be difficult because Tremaine Edmunds is gone. Not the biggest Tremaine Edmunds advocate myself, but at the same time, to just kind of parachute this 6'5" athletic freak into your pass coverage, he was a weapon. I mean, his arms, he could just take away passing windows in ways that maybe it did kind of go underappreciated. If they pull this off, then you have to consider him one of the better defensive minds in football. I just have my doubts in that moment, in that playoff moment, because we haven't seen it. Right? I think they'll look good in the regular season overall. They'll probably be a top 10, top 12 defense, force some turnovers. But what happens in the playoffs when you've got Trevor Lawrence coming on in Jacksonville? Mahomes isn't going anywhere. We'll talk about Miami. I think it gets a little more difficult in that moment for whatever reason for this head coach and this defense. But it is a one last run, because I think let's not write the obits for the safeties, Poyer and Hyde, but that wasn't pretty against Pittsburgh on that Jaylen Warren 62-yard touchdown. It just was kind of a sign that this is probably the last hurrah for that core group as a defense.
I mean, Tyler, I actually think they're going to play at a high level, the safeties. I'm expecting them to play, when I say at a high level, at a level good enough to play at the Super Bowl caliber they expect that this defense has played at. I don't think they would be. That's what I mean. I think that this is their one last shot. Hey, we're going all, not that they're going all in, but they know Von Miller, come on. How much more is he going to have? I mean, this is it. And they need him, to your point. I think they need him. And I think them moving on from Basham to another I mean, all this is going to get dissected more heavily if they do not make the Super Bowl, correct? Or maybe that's a little too much. But if things don't go well on defense, that's the story where I'm betting on the Bills playing outstanding on defense.
Right, because it's offensively Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy. I love Gabe Davis this season. I think Gabe Davis is going to be
I'm not even worried
I'm with you.
About the
offense will be fine.
I think loaded. I think it's Chiefs, Bills, Eagles. All it's all they're going to be fighting for. Lions. They'll be fighting for best offense. I threw your Lions.
Here's the other thing that we should point out too is it's not like so this AFC is loaded at quarterback. I think we all recognize that it's in a different weight class in comparison to the NFC. But when you really do look at the defenses, Jim, even if the Bills do have some legitimate concerns on defense, so do those other teams with juggernaut offenses, right? Chris Jones isn't even in Kansas City as we record this. He's not on the roster yet. He's still holding out. It's their best player. It's their best player.
They need him. Hey, Detroit need him. Right away. Detroit opening night. No Chris Jones.
Jacksonville wasn't able to draft or sign anybody to what was a middle of the road to not great defense. And I like Jacksonville a lot. Like the better defenses in the AFC have like Mac Jones at quarterback, right? I think the Bills might be able to try to turn these games into shootouts and still win these games with their issues on defense.
Well, so what's your AFC East prediction then? I went hard on the Bills. I mean, we don't have to go that crazy. We went dead in depth there on the Bills because I know we spend time on them. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that because I feel like you feel like I think I know where you're going to go. But go ahead.
I think it's going to come down to the last week or the second to last week with Miami.
Miami, yeah.
And it comes with
I
a
agree.
caveat of injury. I think at this point, most people would be almost surprised if Tua Tagovailoa can get through an entire season healthy. Not just because of the concussions, too. I mean, he's had a lot of injury issues. Just some quarterbacks and some players, the way their bodies are built, it's harder for them to withstand the rigors of a season. But I think my one outlandish prediction for this season is going to be that Tua just stays healthy all season. And not only that Mike McDaniel figures out a counterpunch. We've gotten into it, but that Chargers game was a turning point where you saw Brandon Staley and the Chargers kind of put out a blueprint. Like if you take away that first read that Tua has, it's tougher for him to kind of get to that next read, to dissect the field with a little more complexity. They never were really able to get that running game going, and they're kind of running it back. Raheem Mostert is starting again. They drafted A-Chain. Jeff Wilson's on IR. So we'll see what happens in that backfield. I just think that Mike McDaniel is brilliant, and he'll figure it out. You give him 6.5 months to really study these defenses and to work with Tua. Remember, last offseason was their first offseason together. We wrote about it at length at the site where, man, Tua was able to gain distance on his long ball over the offseason, and he's learning a new scheme, and he's throwing to Tyreek Hill for the first time. I mean, imagine trying to gain timing with Tyreek Hill down the field with his speed. So I think that's only going to get better, that rapport, and I just think schematically they're going to figure something out in the passing game. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not going to pretend to know what it is. I just think that McDaniel is unbelievably smart and gets his guys and is going to get the most out of them. So I'm not similar to the Bills, right? I'm not that worried about their offense. I think they'll put up points. And then I think the defense with Vic Fangio is going to take a huge step. I think I have more confidence in Miami's defense than Buffalo's defense, given the fact that maybe it is about money in this sense, right? They were able to go get David Long and Jalen Ramsey. You still have the core of Javon Holland, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, like I mentioned. They can run, and they're violent. Ramsey's got the injury. But Vic Fangio pretty well, I would think, right? I mean, he was in the league. I mean, your Saints faced his 49ers in an epic battle once upon a time. He's one of the better defensive coaches. Top 5, maybe top 3. With that kind of talent, I think that he's going to figure it out. And figure it out's kind of vague. I don't think you just stop Josh Allen, but I think he'll be able to confuse the Bills and confuse Josh Allen just enough to force maybe just a couple turnovers. They get Tua and McDaniel a couple key possessions, and they'll at least split the season series. So I don't know. I guess that's my long-winded way of saying I think Miami wins the AFC East, Jim.
No, I was going to tell you, I'm not going to argue. I think Bills, Miami, all that, it's, like I said, I just feel like the Bills are going to do it. But yes, that Miami team is locked and loaded.
Do we even want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets?
No, next division. No, it's up to you. Good. You tell me.
No, I want to talk about let's talk AFC North. Man, this is the best division in football, I think. Top to bottom.
Yeah, it's tough. I got to think about that. Yeah. No, I'm not going to argue because I know it is. I got to think if there's another one. Rodgers, Josh Allen. That division we just talked about. I mean, we didn't talk about the Jets and Patriots, but when you do have Patriots are going to have a top 5 defense, and the Jets have a top 5-10 defense with Aaron Rodgers. That division's loaded. So I don't want to just I'm just over Aaron Rodgers. I'm kind of with you. I just don't think the Jets are going to be good enough to beat Miami and Buffalo.
Did you
There you
see
go.
his quote about having a dream and wanting to stay inside that dream and never wanting to escape that dream with the Jets?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah. Well.
I can't wait for
Hey,
the season.
in his defense, though, I think we've all kind of had that moment. Every once in a while, I'm dreaming of our Ellicottville Eagles playing Randolph again, at a Ralph Wilson Stadium and winning this time my senior year of high school. And I don't want to wake up from that. I want to stay in that dream and win the game this time around. Yeah, it was out there. But yeah, the honeymoon period, it does come to a close. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets won that game though Monday night.
Oh no,
I
neither
wouldn't be
would I.
surprised if the Jets won, but then the Jets crater as the season progresses along.
I'm telling you, Tyler, I feel like every year we do these predictions, but if we really revisit what we predict and say, I don't even know. I'm talking about you and I'm talking about everybody that does it.
In the AFC North, Joe Burrow, the poor guy, every season there's something. Appendectomies, calf strains, COVID, recovering from an ACL. I mean, I think every single season he's been in the NFL, I kind of jumped around there. He really hasn't been able to start and play a whole training camp and go into the season guns a-blazing. I mean, this calf injury, just seeing it with Aaron Rodgers up close, these things can recur and pop up again, and you don't want to rush back. But they seem really confident in his recovery, where he's at physically. Sounds like he's good to go. Does it matter that he missed basically all the camp to you? Does that missed time matter when it comes to offensive timing and rhythm and just because, but look, I know you're shaking your head, but that first game last year, he had like 5 interceptions against Pittsburgh. It was brutal.
I'm smiling because the Bengals have not been fast, quick starters with Burrow. That they just have not been. So I'm not expecting a fast start from Cincy, even if he was healthy. For some reason, it's been taking them a little bit to kind of just get rolling. But no, I don't think it's gonna. I'm with you. The more I love this division, though. Yeah, go ahead. So
I like
Cincy's more
Cincinnati
Burrow,
still.
right? Okay,
Orlando
that's who you're
Brown,
going with.
huge addition, literally, figuratively. If you look at how their seasons have ended the last 2 years, Super Bowl, Aaron Donald destroying Quentin Spain, right? I mean, if Joe Burrow has a split second, a half of a second, there's a really good chance he finds Jamar Chase wide open downfield because Jalen Ramsey fell down, and it's an all-time Super Bowl moment. But the line breaks down. Aaron Donald gets to him, kind of lassos him around, and he's got to throw it away. Last season, Chris Jones moves out to defensive end, gets to Joe Burrow, sacks him, third down. They get the ball back, and with an assist from Joseph Osai, who was having a hell of a game for Cincinnati. It's kind of sad when you think about it. Osai was. He dings Burrow. He dings Mahomes out of bounds, field goal. So the offensive line, if it's better, theoretically, and you can hold up a little bit longer in the playoffs, this is a team that should be in the Super Bowl, should be competing for Super Bowls because nothing else has changed. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They lose Hayden Hurst, Irv Smith, and for him, that's not that big of a change, I don't think. Mm-hmm. Joe Mixon. Now, who's the number 2 back? Because they had Samaje Perine last year, who did well when he was in for Mixon, and these defenses are kind of sitting back in that 2 deep shell. Maybe it's Chase Brown out of Illinois. I still like Cincinnati. I think that they might even start the same way that they did last year. Maybe they even start 2-3, 2-4. I just think the season is so long with the added game and an added playoff team. Pretty much any team in the NFL can kind of go through a hard month and have enough time to get it together, get into the playoffs. and be hot and healthy when it matters most. I mean, even the Rams 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl, I don't think they won a game for an entire month, right? Like in November, Matthew Stafford throwing a pick six at Lambeau Field. I remember thinking right then, yeah, the Rams are done. So
Right.
even if the Bengals start slow, Burrow's too good, Chase is too good. The defense still has dudes that are playmakers. Mike Hilton in that divisional playoff game, man, he was unbelievable. Lou Anarumo is still calling the shots defensively. As loaded as this division is, and we can get to these other teams, I think you still start with Cincinnati. And the fact that Burrow at quarterback has got to be so much more of a headache to defend than even Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson. If I'm Mike Tomlin, because I kind of like Pittsburgh second most in that division. I really like Pittsburgh because he beats you with his mind. I love the fact that Baltimore is bringing in Todd Monken, and they should diversify that passing game. And they draft Zay Flowers. They sign OBJ for a little too much money, probably. The passing game will be better, but the way that Burrow thinks through a game is diabolical. Completed passes to 7 different receivers in the first quarter alone against the Bills. It's like, okay, you want to sit back 8-9 yards? I'll just kill you with 1,000 paper cuts. Yet he also can go deep any given moment. Like when he's got that shot to go for the haymaker, he'll take it, he'll make it. It does seem redundant to just praise Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, but there's a reason for it. Like these are special quarterbacks that it almost makes you respect Mahomes even more. If he keeps winning Super Bowls with as elite quarterback play as we see out there, that's impressive.
So this division, it's just the Bengals. It's hard for me to go against them as well with Burrow. It's all Burrow for me. I'm with you. I don't know what it is until I can see him. Okay, let me stop. The team that I think that can beat a Burrow is a Steelers. So this is pretty boring because you and I are in agreement. Because of that defense, they are built to get to the quarterback. That's what they're building. They're building to beat Lamar, Burrow, Watson. And who better to do it than the best player maybe in the NFL on defense, TJ Watt, a coach who, the track record we know, Tomlin on defense. That's the team I'm paying attention to, is the Steelers. Real quick on the Bengals, their backup running backs, it's Trayvon Williams, who they drafted from Texas A&M, and then 2 other players that they drafted as well. What my point of this, which is really cool, Trayvon Williams, Chase Brown, Chris Evans, they're all drafted by the Bengals. I love that. That's home. You know what I mean? That's a sign of a solid franchise to me. Year in, year out, sustained success, drafting well, keeping your players. All right, but Steelers to me on defense, they're the wild card because they have enough elite talent, Fitzpatrick as well, to affect Burrow, Lamar, Watson. Do the other teams have enough to beat Burrow knows. I don't know if they're good enough to beat Burrow other than the Steelers on defense.
Kenny Pickett. I
can't wait
had
to
a
see
little
how
time with him this past week. We sat down and chatted for whatever it was, 40, 45 minutes. We'll have a story at Go Long later this week. It will be one of our last season preview features, but put on 15 pounds of muscle. And the question with Kenny Pickett his entire life, Jim, has been, okay, how much better does it really get here? You're kind of this prototypical pocket passer, pale white, blue collar, New Jersey quarterback who did, he had these private school offers, but you just kind of stayed with your buddies and played. How good are you really? And it pisses him off. He was unbelievably open on his own rise from obscurity, really. I mean, his growth spurt was so late in high school that it kind of took a while for colleges to even notice him. UConn didn't even really want to wait for him to bring his mom on a visit. Then Temple was his loan offer for a while. He gets to Pitt, is third, fourth string, has an epic game against number 2 Miami. And really, I mean, it still took a full 4 seasons there at Pitt to kind of turn that corner, because if he were to come out a year early, he was being told he was a 6th-round guy who really wasn't going to get any better, that his ceiling was only so high. But at every step, he did kind of raise his own ceiling, and he did it his way with a borderline cockiness that he leans into. He doesn't really shy from. He's got some swag to him. You can see why Mike Tomlin and the Steelers love his character and his attitude, because I think if you're quarterback for the Steelers, stepping into Ben Roethlisberger's shadow like that, like you can't be sheepish and meek and intimidated. And he's not. And he's bigger, noticeably stronger. Preseason games are what they are, but he was lights out, right? 5 drives, 5 touchdowns. And he's got weapons all over the place. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren at running back, and probably most important, the offensive line. We talk so much about just terrible offensive line play throughout the NFL. I really like the Steelers line. To take a guard straight from the Jeff Stoutland school of offensive linemen to drafting a tackle in the first round, I think he's going to have the time he needs to think quickly. And he's not necessarily Joe Burrow, but I think he thinks through the game, thinks through his progressions at a level that does kind of behoove his age, like years ahead of schedule. And what happened in these fourth quarters when he's down, he needs a drive, he's facing 3rd and longs, facing 4th downs. We all kind of just forgot about the Steelers because they started, 2-7, 2-6? They started so poorly. I feel like most of the country just kind of wrote them off. And all Pickett did was have a ton of fourth quarter comebacks. There's something to that. I think they're right there behind Cincinnati. I'm going to give the Steelers 10 wins. I think that they get into the playoffs, and the future looks really, really bright for them beyond this season.
Agree on everything you said with the Steelers. And we talked about it for the loyal listeners last year. We talked about Pickett coming on. We saw the progression with the moment was never too big for him early when he first got in. And then you saw the success at the end. They were just so injured on defense. They were a team nobody really wanted to play in the playoffs. So yeah, this is going to be if you combine Pickett taking that progression that a year or 2 quarterback will take with that elite defense, that's a recipe for a Super Bowl. What do we talk about the 4 things? I mean, ownership, GM, head coach synced up. If Pickett's the guy, Steelers are a Super Bowl contender.
Alex Highsmith, opposite TJ Watt. Minka Fitzpatrick is still there in his prime.
Wanted to ask you, did Pickett get married this offseason?
Yeah.
And you said he gained 15 pounds of muscle? I just want to make sure. All right. Anyway, but I do think the Steelers, I'm with you. Like that's a boring one for everybody, but that division, these first 2 divisions, East, North, I don't see any weeks off for anybody. Like there's just no such thing.
I kind of love the dynamic in Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky, where at this time last year, Trubisky's the starter. They signed Trubisky before they drafted Pickett. It's his team. He's going into this like his next big chance after a year in Buffalo to take over a team, take over an offense. And then Mason Rudolph is the number 2. Pickett's the number 3. Yeah. So that dynamic in the locker room, it had to have been awkward because everybody knows that all right, Pickett's the first round pick. He's going to see the field at some point. And then Trubisky starts and struggles. It's ugly. How much of it is him? How much of it is Matt Canada and the plays being called? And then you fast forward a year and they just seem like best buds. Like their wives are friends. They're hanging out all the time. I'm interviewing Kenny Pickett in the locker room. Trubisky comes over and gives me hell for talking to him for so long, and because I knew Trubisky actually from the Bleacher Report days, doing some stories there. It just is. I'm always kind of fascinated by just in the locker room relationships because there's personal and there's professional. Where Trubisky's got to be thinking, man, this is my shot to reclaim my reputation, take over a team. It doesn't work out, but he sticks around. Like at some point, he had to think, okay, it didn't work out, but I like it here. I could have a Chase Daniel like career as a backup, make a lot of money, have a lot of fun, jump into a game from time to time, and him and Pickett are tight. So kind of a neat thing. We'll see. We'll see how. Hey, everybody has a plan until the bell dings and you've got to get out there. I just think that Pickett is probably the quarterback out of all of those quarterbacks outside of Mahomes and Allen, Burrow, throw Lawrence in there. I think Pickett has the best chance of kind of forcing his way into that conversation. Before we move on, though, Jim, I mean, Lamar, any thoughts on Lamar and the Ravens? Because I think we both like what they did in the offseason, paying him what he deserves and getting a different offensive coordinator, getting him weapons. And as much as we like all of that they did, they could finish third in the division. They could finish fourth in the division after all of that, which is crazy.
It's crazy, but 3 teams certainly could make it. I mean, and they, once again, yes, we're not talking. Yeah, they're good enough to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion, too, because of Lamar. But there's so much unknown with them with this new offense that for me to go out there and really speak and say, I think they can do this and that, I will need to watch them a little bit just to see what they look like, if it looks different than when Greg Roman was there.
Well, we're obviously going to be splitting these podcasts up into AFC and NFC because I don't want to rush anything here.
I hear you. I was going to say we went, I
AFC South.
We don't have to
Jaguars and everybody else.
Yep.
Vrabel and the Titans. Do they?
Yes.
I mean, they're not just going to lay down and die. I mean, he'd never allow that as the coach.
Yep. Very similar to. Funny how Vrabel's team is starting to me, look like a team that he kind of learned from and played for. I mean, they're going to be tough on defense. They're going to run the football. The quarterback is as average as it gets. You know, not going to take you to the next level. That would be the difference. Where Vrabel, Belichick, Tom Brady did a lot, and Mac Jones and Ryan Tannehill are not. So that to me is what's preventing them from getting over that hump in the AFC for the Titans, is the quarterback.
It is hard to really talk. You can talk yourself into a lot of teams all off season long. I think it's been hard to do that with the Titans.
But they're tough.
They're not, they aren't going to be bad. Like they'll be good.
I agree. They're tough. I agree.
Jacksonville's offense. So, I mean, Calvin Ridley. By all accounts, has been spectacular.
Yeah. Yep. Ridley is going to be the one, certainly an X-Clip phenom, but we know he was before X-Clips, he was a phenom before the injury, or suspension. So, big Ridley. That division, Jacksonville, right off the bat, week 1, Jacksonville in Indy.
Boy,
the unknown of the greatest rookie we've ever seen, the unknown of Richardson.
You know, we've got to save that podcast.
No, we're going to save.
So when Anthony Richardson just takes the NFL by storm, we're going to resurface all those Tebow sound bites from Jim.
Well, we
nudge those off into the atmosphere.
We have somebody that we need to get on the show who totally agrees with you and against me. Who studied, and he had a take on Richardson that I have not really heard or thought about. And it's something to pay attention to. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about this guy to have on the show. But yeah, definitely interesting. All right. Jacksonville, though, that team is built to get to the playoffs, win their division for sure. Can they? Does Lawrence, Ridley, are they special enough to go against Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar, Josh. I mean, we keep going back to it's always going to be, can you get through that wall of greatness? Can Trevor get to that through that wall?
I don't think that there's another team in the AFC with 4 better receiving options than Jacksonville. Maybe the whole NFL. When you go Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, they're loaded. I mean, they did all that on offense last year without a true number one. I mean, Ridley could be that X that just evokes fear. I mean, the last time we saw Calvin Ridley, he was an ascending star. There's a reason Devontae Adams, when he was asked for his top 5 receivers, he put Ridley 4th, I think, which is nuts because Kirk justified his contract. Zay Jones did too. Read about his surreal life at the site. I mean, 5 years ago, he's trying to throw himself out of a window 50 floors high, 30 floors high. Unbelievable. Evan Ingram, he's turned his career around when it looked like he was a bust at one point with the Giants. If I were to nitpick the Jaguars offensive line, because they're going to be without Cam Robinson for 4 games, I believe. So you're reshuffling up there a little bit. I think we kind of have to come back to the point we made earlier on the Bengals. So you can kind of go through a rough stretch in a 17-game schedule with an extra playoff team admitted, even if the line is so-so. They've got the talent to compensate for it. Travis Etienne at running back, by the way. Tank Bigsby. Be fun to see what his role is. I think they'll be okay. In the division, we didn't even mention the Texans. They're not going to compete anytime soon. The Colts around Anthony Richardson. I was really excited for Anthony Richardson, but that was with Jonathan Taylor working that RPO game with him a little bit. That kind of stinks that we're not going to see that anytime soon.
Tyler,
Jacksonville's going to run away with the division.
What rookie quarterback would need one of the best running backs in the NFL? I mean, who would want to help the rookie quarterback out a little bit? That whole thing stinks. Stinks for Richardson, Colts fans. Number 1, Taylor.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it does.
With you on Jacksonville. With you.
And then we get to the AFC West, where Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, we think Chris Jones at one point, probably win the division, probably host an AFC Championship game again. Feels automatic at this point, but the Chargers are going to be interesting. Granted, they always kind of Charger seasons away in soul-sucking fashion. I love the Kellen Moore hire, though. We really haven't discussed the Chargers much this offseason, Jim, but what did you make of that? Where in Dallas, as Jerry Jones does from time to time, people get scapegoated and excuses get made, and he doesn't want to fire Mike McCarthy quite yet. So Mike McCarthy whacks a bunch of coaches, including Kellen Moore. And he kind of, it was really patronizing, the comment he made at the combine down the lines of, hey, I was in Kellen's position once, and, you just want to score all these points. You just want to move the ball all over the place. And I learned you got to take some pressure off of your defense, and we're going to run the damn ball. Okay, let's see how that plays out for you, Mike, and the Dallas Cowboys, because I think Kellen Moore was a driving force in the success of that offense, not a detriment. Dak Prescott had stretches where he was dealing. I mean, the ball is just flying off his hand. He's seeing the whole field. He's in the cockpit. He's in command. I'm not there day in and day out. I feel like a lot of that had to do with a comfortability with Kellen Moore more than anything Mike McCarthy was doing and anything else that could be doing offensively. He doesn't strike me as the problem there. And then it's crazy to think that Justin Herbert's done what he's done statistically at this point of his career with blah coaching. I mean, we like that Brandon Staley was saying for a while on going for it with these 4th downs. Probably took it to the extreme. eventually. But he's bold. He thinks outside the box. I appreciate all that, but he's still a defensive coach. And Joe Lombardi was running the offense, and it never really evolved. They became stagnant at the worst possible times and had the fourth worst collapse in NFL history against the Jaguars in the playoffs. Your thoughts on Kellen Moore?
Only know of studying the Cowboys' success. Don't know, never worked with him, but only hear positive things. The stats say that was a hell of a team with Kellen Moore and Dak. I mean, so to your point, risky by Dallas, I guess.
To replace him with Brian Schottenheimer.
Well, and I think great move to go back to the Chargers point. Yeah, love it. Love it for Herbert. And once again, it's real simple. All the talent. Can he get through the wall? Can the coach? Is it going to be the combination of new Kellen Moore, hopefully healthy? You talked about that. Health is going to be big. One team I'm paying attention to. I can't believe I'm going to say this. The Raiders. Are you shocked?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to drop a Las Vegas Raiders take.
Not that they're going to be here. I just don't think they're doormats. Let's go with that. Is that fair? If I can just leave it at they're not doormats. I'll leave it at that. That's a team I'm paying attention to. Wink, wink. That I'm paying attention to early in the season. Let's just say I think they're going to surprise some people early.
I thought it was interesting that Jimmy Garoppolo took a little bit of a shot at the 49ers, a justifiable shot.
I felt like
saying that there's a lot of weird things out there, a lot of weird situations out there.
Yes. If it's almost like he's finally like, I'm over this. I'm tired of I was jerked around by that franchise. Like you have to remember, he feels like he was good enough to win a Super Bowl with them. And regardless of how we always, I feel like I've always defended Garoppolo. I feel like I know what he is as a player and I like it. And I don't think he's elite. But when you surround him with an elite running back, Josh Jacobs, an elite receiver, Devontae Adams, I'm intrigued. Is Josh McDaniels ever going to do anything? I mean, it's, what I'm saying? And I almost feel like maybe he will. Maybe he and Garoppolo have this thing that maybe we'll see it this year. I don't. That's the team I'm paying attention to. As a team, you were talking about teams that might sneak up. Just there's something about that team that I just feel like has a combination of talent, toughness, some veteran guy. I'm just going to watch them.
I still can't get that New England assistant coach thing out of my head. These guys go elsewhere and it doesn't pan out. Even Brian Flores, who's a damn good defensive coach, had problems relating to Tua, to a lot of guys in that locker room. The relationships just weren't there, and it came to a head in that Titans game toward the end of that 2021 season. You hear the same kind of stuff with Josh McDaniels, that his team meetings are ruthless. And with the younger player, that's not always the best tack to take. We'll see.
I'm with you.
Hey, he's a smart offensive coach. There's a reason that it worked as long as it did.
100% with you. At some point, let's see these guys do something. Like you're getting chances as a head coach. A lot of guys don't get second chances, whatever it is. Let's see it now. I think there's some elite talent there, though, to pay attention to.
Let me just ask you this, too. On the Chargers, they kind of remind me of, just as an organization, your New Orleans Saints, in that the Saints were just so bad for so long. It was hard to maybe just get rid of that feeling in your head, like, oh, something is bound to go haywire here. Just organizationally, like something seeps within the pores of your franchise over the course of the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s. It's like, man, we got to bust through. Like, we've got to win one of these big games, big playoff games, have a moment, and now we can just kind of play. The Chargers feel like a team at that place where for forever they've just been a team you expect something to go wrong in the worst possible way. And it does. It's like a demonic presence in the building. And they've got all the talent. Justin Herbert is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now, and he deserves it. What does it take? Like, how did you guys, when you were with the Saints, like, what was that moment? It felt like, okay, no, like we're the top dog, and we're not afraid anymore. You're like your Macaulay Culkin and Home Alone screaming that you're not afraid anymore. Like, it's okay. Let's not panic.
So, Tyler, I completely do agree with your take a little bit with what the Chargers are going through with the Saints and how you feel like you can become top dog and be there every year. You just have to do it. It takes that one time. We did it in 2006 out of nowhere, and we believed every year after that. We didn't have success every year after that. It was hard. But we kept fighting because we knew we had the quarterback. We knew we had the coach. We believed. They know it. They just have to have that one moment. I think we've talked about moments. Have that big signature win in the playoffs. Knock out a Joe Burrow. Knock out a Josh Allen. Whoever it is. And that's when I don't think that belief stops because you've done it. But I think you have to see it first.
Justin Herbert is talented enough.
Oh, no question.
To be a quarterback who is in AFC championship games year in and year out. That's such a great point. It just takes that one game. It's not going to be a regular season moment at Arrowhead. He already had one of those. It's going to be, we grew up watching Brett Favre and the Packers. It's like Favre at Candlestick beating Steve Young and the Niners the year after they won the Super Bowl. That kind of stuff. Like if he does it in the playoffs, against an Allen, against a Burrow, against a Mahomes, then we can think about the Chargers in a different way. Until then, I'm still going Chiefs, Chargers, then your Raiders, Jim Onis's Raiders, as they will be referred to this point forward.
I still agree with your order. I still would go that order. I have the Raiders third. I think, Tyler, after this episode, I think I have 13 AFC teams making the playoffs. So
sounds
I got to
right.
regroup.
Don't give the owners in Goodell any ideas, right? They already want everybody making the playoffs.
I just think the Raiders are going to be one of those teams that, I just think you're going to have to show up to. They're not as like, they need to be discussed. That's all.
I like it. This was a very workman-like, business-like podcast. We had to kind of work through the divisions, and we'll do the same thing with the NFC next time we ding record. So unless you got anything else, Jim, any more field goals, down 42-0?
Oh, we're going to be tracking that all year. And hey, your Syracuse, they covered. They were giving 40.5.
Wow, 40.5. It does make Appalachian State beating Michigan like that much more impressive when you just see all of these small schools getting absolutely destroyed. Like when it does happen, it makes it that much sweeter. But I don't really know when we're going to see that again.
No, it's going away fast, the NCAA, all that.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, reading, and sharing. A lot to announce. Actually, you probably are already seeing the announcements right now on the site if you're listening to this. So, yes, can't wait to share. Thank you so much for subscribing, for sharing. We'll catch you next time.